this very interesting questions in the context what you said about our region in your presentation, and partially it was also in Mongolian with Mongolian subtitle.
Right.
Mongolians know about your famous word called Minegolia.
Yes.
And you said in that presentation that 10 to 20 years from now, China is buying completely Mongolia. And China is also leasing Russia in an economic sense. So could you give more details about that and why you are saying that?
So the broader context is what I described in the Second World. The idea that when you have an empire, you do not treat it as a bordered state. Its influence spreads far beyond. It radiates, it integrates everything around it. And that the history of Asia is not the history of sovereign nation states with clear borders.
Yes.
It is a history of core empires and peripheral territories. It is a history of a central heart and a tributary system. Japan dominated the system. China has dominated the system.
Mongolians have dominated.
Mongolians have dominated the system before the others.
Yes.
And so my point is we are returning to that. And you remember during World War II, Japan's ambition was to have a greater Japanese co-prosperity, greater East Asian co-prosperity sphere dominated by Japan.
Now that's why we had the war.
Right. I am saying that today there is a greater Chinese co-prosperity sphere emerging. There is a triangle. To me, the strategic Asian triangle is Japan, India, Australia. China is in the center of that.
Okay.
And the relationships that China is building is a reconstruction of that model, that historical Asian model. So that is the broader context. So I think Mongolians should see that they are one piece of that. So when I say things about Mongolia, it's not Mongolia-centric. This is a global, regional phenomenon. Remember that the Asian region is the most populous in the world. To step back for 1 minute, when people say, can China rival the United States in the world? I say it doesn't matter. Asia is the world, or Asia is a world unto itself. Asia has most of the world's people.
Nevertheless, you said that many people today, where they are living, will not live in that territory in 10, 20 years.
That's right.
And then it is touching interests of many people today in this or that way. And do you think it is exactly happening, or if there is any way that, I mean, obviously a country wants to be a bot. Okay, I understand what you said in that sense. So what is the best way not to be bought?
We should talk about this buying and leasing.
Yes.
Because it's so important to realize that this is in many ways a post-sovereign world.
Yes.
Even the realists acknowledge this. They appreciate that economic transactions and commercial influence play a major role in geopolitics today. So I said, colonies used to be conquered, today countries are bought. And that is a blunt fact. And I say this in my analysis of much of what is happening in the world. It is not just China and Mongolia. This is a global shift towards the influence of economics. So that's the first point. And that is what allows you to appreciate the softness of borders, whether it is migration of Chinese people outward, which is a major trend in the region. Look at Southeast Asia, 50 million Chinese.
Well, in the context of small country with few population like Mongolia, 2.5 million, then having neighbors such a big like Russia and China in particular, then this sounds rather
ominous.
Yes, that sounds not good. So what is the way to avoid it, if possible?
Well, be careful. I think, what does one want to avoid? One wants to avoid being bought and owned, but Mongolia's economic growth, Mongolia's prosperity, the good things that have happened in Mongolia since the 1990s, a lot of that has to do with exporting to China.
True.
That is important.
Yes, this is
there is no such thing as being completely separate, divorced from China.
Well, that's the difference of understanding I would like to a little bit develop. And probably a country like Mongolia is to look outward.
Yes.
That's the only way.
Yes.
And when we look at outward world, we have the largest market, which is keeps buying everything what we export.
So maybe it is a good thing if it is managed well, and that is the question.
Yes.
People should not, when I say Minegolia, people should not, in Mongolia, people should not react and say, that is horrible fate. That's not true. First of all, there are 50 or 60 or 70 countries in the world that would beg to be called Minegolia, because it is a brand, and it is a true statement that Mongolia has vast natural resources.
Where did you take it from?
To offer to the world.
The term.
I don't know.
Does it sound in English in that way?
No. Yes. It Mongolia, and then you just have
Minegolia.
Yeah, but I did not invent it. But now I get the credit.
Okay, very interesting combination of two words.
But there are many countries that would love to have that branding and to have the real resources. And this is the question.
In fact, we are. I think the large pie of exploration budget in the world was spent in Mongolia.
That's right.
And it's one of the attributes why Mongolia is Minegolia as well.
Right.
Well, we have so many mineral wealth, and the market is next door.
Right.
So that's what is going on in this country.
And so
only the
Mongolia
issue
is lucky.
Yeah, but now the issue is how much and how well we are doing with these proceeds from revenues from that mining wealth. So in that terms, how do you see something wrong, or how much, how much you recognize that factor?
Yeah, that's very, very important. But I want to say that people talk about the resource curse. They say it's a dangerous thing if poor countries discover substantial mineral wealth, extractive sector, oil, gas, so forth. It leads to all kinds of problems: rent-seeking behavior, Dutch disease, resource dependency, all sorts of corruption, of course, and ultimately civil war and collapse. There's been a lot of research that says that countries that, poor countries that acquire these resources wind up worse off. That is not true. It's no longer true. Because if you look at the Persian Gulf countries today, who does not want to be like them, right? If you look at Malaysia, for example, very admirable. Look at Kazakhstan nearby. So it is not true that the resource curse is universal, and it is not true that Muslim countries cannot prosper and develop with oil. These things are false. There is not a resource curse. It is an opportunity.
Can a country like Mongolia be prosperous with this, and what are required for that?
Yes, there are a lot of ingredients. The good news is that because I cited all of these examples, there is a current history, which sounds like an oxymoron, but I mean there is contemporary evidence and success stories and lessons to learn. The way in which futures funds are set up to take the revenues and allocate to the people. The Alaska model, some people say. And people have said that should be used for Iraq. So that's one ingredient, of course. Another is the reinvestment.
Now we call it the Human Development Fund in Mongolia so far. Yes, the Futures Fund.